Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Art of Creation show, where we look at how choice creates and different possibilities for creating a life and a living that actually work. And today we have the pleasure of being joined by Helen Gitlevich, who is not only an artist, she is also an MD. She is creator and founder of the Akashic Records. Let me just make sure I get this correct. The Akashic School of Creation, and she is a facilitator of, well, actually many different things to facilitate ease with being with ourselves, in relationships, with bodies, all kinds of yummy things. And we get to talk to her today on the topic of joy as a way of being. So Helen, it is a pleasure to have you here today. Joy as a way of being. Please, what is this, and what conversation can we actually have to have more of that in our life?
First thing, thank you for inviting me, and hello to everyone who is watching right now or in the recording or wherever in the future. Well, this morning when you asked me about the name of the show, that's what came up. And to me, joy of being is pretty much enjoying every moment when we are here on this planet, in this body, with no reservation. And that's a space of just, doesn't have to be that excited, hyperactive joy. It can be just a quiet, light, just being present in our lives. Because how often we are not present in our lives?
Yeah.
How often we are on autopilot, totally unconscious of what we're doing, and then we're like, oh my God, what did I do?
Yes.
Talking about choice creates, sometimes that choice is unconscious choice.
Exactly. And when we talk about joy, though, to back up, you said, it doesn't have to be this exuberant joy that we think of, bouncing off the walls and so joy is a word from where I sit that gets thrown around quite a bit, right? Joy,
exactly.
Happiness, even being, right? These are words that we hear all the time. And yet when having conversations with people about joy and, okay, so what is joy in my world? Or where is it that I experience joy? When is it that I experience joy? What are the things that I truly enjoy? What is being? And, I can sit here and it's like, oh, I'm going to be. And yet that can sometimes create even less being than.
Exactly, because
what is this?
Part of it, let's separate. Like, first of all, what is being? Not even going into joy. Because a lot of times I was talking to somebody, it's about being, and she's like, but I don't want to just sit and do nothing.
Yeah, cool.
It's like, excuse me, being has nothing to do with doing or not doing. Because a lot of people associate being is doing nothing, sitting on the beach, watching TV or playing the games. By the way, it's still doing something.
Right. Right. We think that oh, well, if I'm really being, maybe it has to involve a spiritual practice, or maybe it has
meditation,
or something like really intellectually deep, or, whatever.
Or not intellectual. A lot of times it's like simply doing nothing, just like trying to shut down the mind.
Oh, or vegetating.
Yeah, vegetating or sleeping has nothing to do. Being is a space where we are present. We're literally present. And I want you to kind of sense that energy of being present with everything that's going on in your life. Yeah. Just for a second, I just invite people just to drop their barriers. Because a lot of modalities talk about protections and putting the barriers, putting the boundaries around ourselves. How much energy does it take to keep up those barriers, by the way? Yeah. And how much does that take away from being, take away from joy? Because to me, a lot of times being joyful means I'm in connection with everybody and everything, especially in nature. Just for a second, just think of the moment where you're like walking in the woods or being on the beach.
Yeah.
Just be there. Yeah. How wonderfully light that is. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the being space, or space of being.
So now, go ahead.
Or space of joy.
Yeah.
That's kind of like where I'm coming from, where we are in that space. Anything is possible, by the way.
Now, when everything is great, and, there's money in our bank account and there's food on the table and our relationships are going fairly well, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, this is joyful and that's joyful. But then what about being joyful, or joy as a way of being, when something comes up, or we've created something that decreases the money in our bank account, or there's been a death of a loved one, or there's been something that's happened that we're aware of in the media that is a global event, something that is stirring up a lot of energy for people. What can you speak to still being that space of joy, even when there's all this kind of invite to turmoil and to all kinds of emotions and drama and trauma and all those things that do not generally have that sense of joy and lightness to them?
A lot of people actually misidentified the idea of joy and being connected to what's going on in our lives. In the reality, the way we function, we're used to, okay, if everything is going good, then I'm joyful. If something is not, it's not. How many people, even in the phase when everything is going so good and the relationship is fine and money is there, how many of those people are still unhappy? And don't have joy in their lives? And then they go on medication for depression. And then they call it chemical depression. And that's something to go do with the brain. In reality, it's not the situation we're in. It's the choices we make with ourselves. There was a class, I believe, in Access, which was called Happiness is Just a Choice. It was, by the way, the smallest class in history of Access. Yes,
it says a lot.
Right. A lot of people do not choose joy and happiness. Even when things are going good, they still create something that will excuse them for not feeling good.
So for anyone who's watching this who's not feeling good, like, what would the value of choosing that be? And what would be some ways that they could now start shifting, even if it's just a 1 degree shift, and then that allows for more of a shift?
That was where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Because a lot of times it's a choice. So I asked a lot of people, what's the benefit of illness? What's the benefit of not feeling good, or creating the drama and trauma and cancer and all kinds of things? And a lot of those people told me, for different people it's different. The examples that I remember is, it's attention, seeking attention from people around them. When they're doing good, people don't pay attention to them. When they're sick, the kids are around, the husband is running around, or wife is running around them and taking care of them. So a lot of time, and I'm not talking about conscious choices. We are talking about totally unconscious and anti-conscious choices, because a lot of things, like we talk about conscious when we know what we're doing, everything is exactly what we chose. And then unconscious is like autopilot. We have no idea what's going on. Why did we choose it? Why did the illness come? Yeah. Why did I have cancer? Why did I have this? Why did I have that? And then there is anti-conscious, when we know exactly what we need to do and do the opposite against ourselves. Let's say somebody who is diabetic, they know they shouldn't be eating chocolate cake, but then they go and eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's something there that they're actually choosing that has a greater value than what they know is possible by eating the chocolate cake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for people who are not feeling well or who are not in that joyful state, number one reason, it's not even the benefit of that. Number one reason is because we're all psychics and we pick up from other people. Because things might be going fine in our lives, but then we are not feeling well because of global events, because of a lot of things that's going on around the world, or even with the neighbors. We pick up that energy of unhappiness, the energy of despair, and multiply it by deciding it's ours.
Yeah. So what can we choose if we'd like to move that needle from the default setting over
it's not even default setting, it's just like the low setting to the high setting, right?
Cool. Okay, cool. So how
we can always, very simple, just asking, who does it belong to? Very simple. And then if it lightens up, just send it back.
But wait a minute. If it's terrible and you send it to this person, aren't you sending them terrible things?
No, it's what they created. It's not terrible to them. They have the benefit of that. That's number one. Number two, if you have somebody's computer that's locked, can you do anything with that? It's a wonderful computer. It might be the highest speed, the highest everything, but you can't use it. You just carry it as a dead weight. Same thing with emotions. We carry emotions of other people like a dead weight in our body, and it's literally dead weight. It creates illnesses, it creates dis-ease, and our self starts changing. A lot of times we talk, like I like to in scientific terms, and I apologize for people who do not like it.
I like it.
Because our cells are very round, circular, kind of like should be. It's normal state. We call it the concentric. And the stress of this reality, like this reality is very linear. We're talking about time and space being kind of like from point A to point B, we get in 1 hour, and it's very linear. And that's what a lot of times causing stress with people, because we need to get there on time. Traffic, things that prevents us to move along that one line of action. And when the cells of our bodies, the molecules, connect energetically with our reality, it creates a stress and pulling it apart. So it becomes an ellipse. So our body becomes stressed out. That's where the emotions of unhappiness, that's emotions of pain, not so much emotion, but actual pain in the body occurs. And again, it might not be even ours, but we're picking up from those people. When it's not ours, we cannot change that. It's like the locked computer. You cannot use it.
Yeah.
By giving back, you bringing the consciousness back to that person where they can realize what they're doing, because you didn't take away that pain. The pain is still there. What you're actually bringing there is a consciousness.
As awareness of
what's going on. So they can realize and change that.
Yeah. And you know, when I started using that tool, right, this question as a tool, I remember just being flabbergasted how simply by asking, you know, who does this belong to, or actually, I really like just asking, is it mine? And just getting the sense of like, oh, no, actually it's not mine. And how quickly things can just lighten up without having to figure out who and what and where and when, and like you said before, without having to actually do anything, simply just asking the question and then just allowing myself to recognize the shift and the change in the space that then is available. And so it sounds so simple, and like, how could asking a question change anything? And yet just try it and see, because I know for myself it was really fun, and to kind of play with, well, if every thought, feeling, and emotion that I have, which would be like every second, right?
Sometimes microseconds.
Microseconds, yeah. Like if none of that was actually mine, and I just was able to return all of that with consciousness attached, then it creates that space of like, well, what would I like to choose? I no longer have to be on default. And also, wow, what would it be like if everyone on the planet began to have awareness about what they were choosing and what their default settings might actually be, their autopilots?
And also, think about, if we are picking up other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions, what if we, being the joy and happiness, could be a transmitter of that?
Yeah.
And other people can take it up.
Yeah. And
how much can we change the face of Earth with that?
Yeah. So if we're all being the tuning fork anyway.
Exactly. We can be tuning forks for the
trauma and the drama.
Depression.
Yeah. And we can also begin to to be the vibration of the joy and possibility, really.
Exactly. Yeah. And being the kind of like the possibility of the choice that actually creates the possibility of different future, different reality. What if this reality was only one possible choice? What if we could create beyond? What if we could use magic?
Yeah. Well, I remember years ago, Deepak Chopra, talking about how nervous and jerky thoughts create nervous and jerky cells, right? And I remember thinking that years and years ago. And at that time, here he's a medically trained doctor, and he was really one of few that was beginning to speak out at the time about these different possibilities that may, in a lot of ways, look like magic. And yet, the way I look at it, it's like, oh, it's just science that hasn't been discovered yet. It's something that in our linear, you're talking about this linear way of looking at things and the linear logic. And it's like, okay, well, if it can't be explained in this linear construct, then in order to make the linear construct work, we'll just have to throw that outlier out. And yet it's like, okay, we're throwing out all these outliers in order to make this work. It begs the question of, is this actually the outlier? And
exactly.
Looking at all of this.
This is actually, you're talking about, that's how my journey actually started, with realizing that this traditional reality or this traditional medicine is not enough. Yeah,
you're a classically trained medical doctor.
Absolutely. I went to UIC and then Rush Medical College in Chicago downtown, and then did Raza. I had my own practice, family practice, for about 10 years.
Yeah. So what created that choice for you to be able to create something different, exploring in this way? What's possible?
In a way, I always was aware that there was something else possible, even as a child, having out-of-body experience and a lot of other stuff. But I think the key element was in 92, when I just started my practice, and I went to Mayo Clinic for a conference. The very first lecture was on melanoma, which is a skin cancer, which at that time barely had any treatment available. It was pretty much a diagnosis of death. And Mayo Clinic and UCLA did a study. There was 2 groups of patients. One went through traditional chemotherapy and surgery and all the treatments that the official medicine was doing. And then there was a second group that had alternative. There was energy work, there was meditation, there was visualization, there was other modalities involved in addition to traditional medicine. Mm-hmm. Guess what? 3 times more survival in a non-traditional group than a traditional. That's when I started looking at other ways of helping patients. I was using herbs and supplements, and there was such a great results even with that. Mm-hmm. Some physical therapy started learning Akashic Records at that time, which I did not realize until I actually quit and started doing other things, that Akashic Records were helping me in diagnosis, being much more aware of what's going on in people's bodies. When I would touch someone, even if they came with a sore throat, if I felt something else, I would ask for a different exam. And there were cases where there was breast cancer. Somebody just came in for a simple flu shot. Yeah. Or a sore throat ended up with ovarian cancer on a surgical table that night.
Oh, wow.
So it's amazing how much we limit ourselves because we know much more than we think we do.
So what was that point for you where, because I get that all of us have these things, really that I would call capacities, mm-hmm. things that we each can do and be and perceive, things we know that I think we either just think is normal, like everybody mm-hmm. has the capacity, or that we judge as just so weird that, we kind of hide or keep to ourselves. And it sounds like you had this real capacity. You're working as a medical doctor and you start having you start to notice that you are receiving this information and having awareness that is not necessarily typical mm-hmm. from my experience within that sort of practice. And then what became that, like, how did you get to that place where you were like, I'm going to acknowledge these capacities. I'm going to acknowledge what's occurring here. And I'm going to look what else can I actually choose to continue on that journey? So what was that next step for you?
What's interesting was that I did not acknowledge that. To me, that was just an intuition. I totally brushed it. Oh, that was just a chance. No acknowledgement of capacities at that time. Even as I said, I started doing Akashic Records. It was just more like a hobby or my own self-improvement. Uh-huh. I ended up with open heart surgery myself at 37, with pretty much going through a lot of illnesses, depression, anxiety, and other stuff that I'm not even going to go into. Yeah. And for quite a few years, I was looking at different modalities for help to get myself out of that. Yeah. I didn't even look at acknowledging my capacities at that time. Not until I started doing access consciousness, where I was opening myself to more possibilities, to more awarenesses. I started looking back at what did I do before, or what was I before, and the choices I made that brought me to this point today.
Yeah. Now, when you say choices you made before, do you mean earlier in this lifetime, or choices you made before on an even broader scale?
I would say both.
Okay, cool.
Because a lot of choices we made in other lifetimes create or shape our lifetime now. Yeah. People talk about karma. And a lot of karma are made up from unfinished business. Let's say 200 years ago, we promised to love, cherish, and obey in our marriage vows. Yeah. To somebody, and then suddenly, and by the way, that contract goes forever. because soul never dies. We think it's only one lifetime. Think about how many wives and husbands we have throughout lifetimes. Oops.
So, I thought it was challenging enough just to have one.
Exactly. So let's say that husband or wife is here today, but not as a husband and wife. Maybe that person is a boss or a coworker, or it might be a child or a parent. A lot of times people have a weird relationship with their parents, almost like a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And that goes back to that unfinished contract from before, or overprotective parent, or something else. So the idea that that choice created that this lifetime we have that parent as our parent. Or I was talking more probably in this instance about my choices of being married to a certain person, or my choice. And again, some of those conscious and some of them are unconscious. Even creating a heart disease is still a choice.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about choices we make when we say or think certain things. How often people say, I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah. And
that starts creating a cancer or a heart, something terminal in the body. The person forgot that he said that.
Yeah.
5, 10, 15 years down the road, cancer shows up. Yeah. And they're like, why is it happening to me? Well, let's say you created it 15 years ago when you said you could live like that. The body does not realize that you've changed your mind. It's still kind of on the programming you gave 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Or the other example I have is so funny. I know a woman who has hearing loss. And there was an issue with her husband 10 years ago where she said, I don't want to hear that. Oops. Oops. Choice creates. Our emotions create. And the more emotional statement, the faster it creates.
Yeah. And I mean, I can even see that, you know, in your story too, right? Like here we're having a conversation that is about joy as a way of being. Yeah. And you were in medical practice, and you being you actually was showing up in those moments of intuition. And yet those were the things at that time that were getting kind of brushed aside. And then through open heart surgery and through, you know, sort of these things that we would consider trials and tribulations, you're actually in a place of health and
joy
and living as joy. So
exactly.
It's kind of that thing of like, what's the gift in all of this? And it's like, oh, well, you know, okay, so when we like, it's like, I would choose that for what reason? And yet it's interesting.
And yet it is.
Look what it created. Of course, we can also ask, all right, now, what can I create maybe in this next period without necessarily having to have the open heart surgery, or without having to have, you know, the critical disease or the, you know, the ailment or whatever. So
that's the difference when you're creating consciously versus unconsciously.
Yeah, because then you can actually ask for what it is that you desire, and then look at what you're choosing and ask, okay, is this actually creating more of what I would like to create, or is this actually me being unconscious? Yeah.
It actually goes even more, because when we are asking questions, we're creating more choices. How many times in our lives we were told you have to find the right answer and you have to make a decision?
Never.
Nope.
I've never heard that before. That's so weird.
Nope. But that's what closes the possibilities. Or how often you can choose this or that. two choices.
Mm-hmm.
What if I want something else? Like, remember, like in that question, do you want vanilla ice cream or chocolate? No, I want strawberry.
Yes.
But that's not on the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by asking questions, we are opening the door to infinite possibilities. And that's when the universe listens.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I actually taught the classes on creative visualization and law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is ask and you shall receive, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
There is like multiple steps to that.
Well, and that's even in the Bible. I mean, that's
right. Yeah,
that's self-help that's been around for quite a long time.
Exactly, and there is a lot of truth in that. So with that, when I was teaching people to ask, we were asking for what we know, and that's an affirmation. It worked, but it's still limiting choices.
Mm-hmm.
When we start asking questions, we involve the universe at much greater capacity. We ask, and then the universe goes, oh, you'd like that? Let's go create that. And the universe does not distinguish between what we are asking and what we are afraid of, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't.
Because that, it's kind of like, okay, it doesn't know if it's afraid or if it's a request. It does kind of like respond to both.
It just gets the energy of the thing and it's like, oh, okay, here you go.
Here you go. You want to die?
I don't want that. I said, I don't want that. It's like, oh, you want that? Okay, here you go.
Yeah, exactly, because it does not hear the word no or don't. It's all, there is no polarity there. Mm-hmm. In the universe, in the consciousness, there is no good or bad. Yeah. It's just is. So when we're afraid of something or when we desire something, it creates. That's the choices we make. So when we give up the fear, when we give up those things we don't want,
the things we're resisting and reacting to,
or aligning and agreeing with somebody that might not be to our benefit, when we actually choose for us, when we ask questions, what would be the greater value for us? Or how does it get even better than that? Or what else is possible? It opens infinite possibility of creation, infinite possibility of choice. Yeah. I'm so amazed at the magic of the universe, how it can create.
Yes, more.
More. It was the funniest case. I was traveling and asking about how does it get better than that. I was traveling with a friend. There was a lot of magic while we were traveling, but on the way back, I noticed we had seats, A and C. So, like, as you know, there is always like 3 seats across, so somebody in between us. And she's like, oh, we might change our seats. I want to sit together. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just ask questions instead of going into conclusions. So what else is possible and how does it get even better than that? When we got on the plane, first of all, I had no idea it's possible. Second of all, because I didn't know it was possible, I couldn't even create it with the visualization. When we got there, there was a table between us. Exactly my reaction is like, wait, how is it possible?
Wow. Yeah, and yet and that's that thing of like sometimes if you're almost too specific with what you're asking for, you can't, what you're saying, like that was beyond what you could envision or what you could imagine, and so you didn't even know to ask for that, and yet when you saw that it was there, it was such a gift because it was way, way better. Yeah,
we actually took pictures of that just to prove that it does exist in the universe.
That is so cool. So what are some of the questions? So for someone who is like, yes, I would like to play with more of this ask and receive. I'd like to play with more of joy as a way of being. what are some questions that they can begin playing with, or tools that they could start to use?
I would say number one tool that started unlocking me was, how does it get better than that? Yeah. And you can use it in any situation. You can use it when it's wonderful, when everything is going your way, so it gets even better. Or when things are not so cool, when it's like people like down, and as you said, trauma, drama, like somebody dying, somebody like real major events.
Intensity in the body.
Intensity in the body, pain, illness. You can ask, how does it get better than that? Mm-hmm. And what else is possible? It shifts a lot of things just by asking that. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the situation itself right away. It might take a little bit. But eventually it might shift it. On the money situation, that was actually interesting. I did a class at the corporation where I guess their productivity was at 45,000 in that group. And they were, as they said, stagnant. And I asked if I could help with that. I'm like, I can't, but I can give you some tools to work with. So what I did, I gave them the tools. So how does it get any better than that? What else is possible? And the other question is, what would it take? And then you substitute the blank, which is what's going on in your life. Let's say to have more money in my account, or to eliminate pain from my body, or what would it take to create ease with my body? What would it take to get a promotion? Doesn't matter what you're asking for, it can create that. So with that class, using those tools, and I think I gave them a couple of others, their productivity within 1 month went to 55,000.
That is
just
amazing.
By using questions.
Yeah, and this is a group that, is not necessarily into,
spirituality, no,
the universe, or doing any of that. Yeah. Okay. So this really is something that is available to anyone and everyone watching.
You don't have to be a spiritual person. This is very pragmatic. I had a woman at the bank. We're talking about somebody is like totally not spiritual. Mm-hmm. I gave her those questions. She got the promotion that she was asking for. And it was actually only one question. Mm-hmm. What would it take for me to have a promotion?
Yeah.
Within 3 weeks she got it.
Yeah. And the cool thing about these questions too is you can play with them by asking yourself. And there are also questions you can ask out loud. And I found that by asking them out loud, it can be fun and playful with the people you're with. And like with my family, in one of the episodes, I think last season, I shared my experience in Disney World with my family. Mm-hmm. And we call it the How Does It Get Any Better game. And, and we created magic left and right just by being in the energy of like, oh my gosh, like what else is possible? And acknowledging every time something showed up that, was amazing, and just continuing to ask, wow, awesome, universe, what else is possible? How's it get any better?
I'm glad also, you actually,
no, go ahead.
I'm glad you actually said about playing. Yeah. Because it does not work when you use those tools seriously. When you're actually expecting a result, let's say, what would it take for me to have a promotion? Yeah. And then you expect it to get the promotion tomorrow, ain't working. Yeah. This is about playing with the energy. What can I create with that? What is possible? Because the way universe shows up, not necessarily what you think will show up. That promotion might show up as from different company, calling you up and giving you totally different job. Yeah. It might show up as you getting fired and finding another job.
Yeah. I mean, it can show up in so many different ways. And, really being in that, being playful with it, what I get with me is it's like the more playful that I can be with anything really in my life, the more space of allowance that I seem to have. And the more I seem to be willing to receive. Because when I go into that contracted space, like I used to always, like I was a brilliant pusher, like I was always pushing to get things done, pushing to make things happen, pushing, doing, right? And I get a lot done, but at what cost, right? Exactly. I mean, my body had things that weren't functioning well. My mind had things that weren't functioning well. Spiritually, it was a whole, right? So it maybe created some results that I was looking for, and then it also created all the stuff that I wasn't consciously asking for. But with the play, it's like we have so much more space to be able to receive the things that we're asking for, however they show up, because we're not so laser focused, or we don't have blinders on that are created with those projections and expectations.
Exactly. And also with joy, when you're joyful, everything else shows up much easier.
Yeah.
Think of it. Would you like to be with a person who is joyful or in depression?
Yeah.
Guess what?
Or angry, or
needy. Money and even health follows joy.
Yeah.
It's the universe likes to play with joy.
Yeah.
When somebody is depressed, they shut themselves completely from receiving from the universe. So the universe looks at us like, okay, you don't want it? Fine. I'll go play somewhere else where there is more happiness and joy.
Yeah. Well, it's like when we look at, there are conversations around flow, right? And you'll hear people talk about, when you're in flow, you're in that space where time.
That's actually the space of being.
Yes, exactly.
When you're in the flow, that's the space of being.
Yes. Yeah.
And everything is accomplished much faster, much easier. All the doing does not require the hard work.
Yeah. You can take action without having that sense that you have to muscle it or figure it all out, because you can actually just be aware of, okay, what can I choose now? Is this the time? What else could I be aware of? What would create ease here? Yeah, there are all these things that that just, it's like constantly choosing the next piece, without getting everything dammed up and stopped up and contracted and solid, which,
and how much reaction, and how much reaction do we have when we decided we have to do something versus we're choosing to do something?
Yeah. Sometimes
even reframing it, changing the wording that we use, because words have energy. I know with me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when somebody tells me to do something and I know I have to do that, guess what? I don't want to do it.
Again, I don't know what you're talking about.
You're right. No. So it takes me a lot of effort to go through that must, and I still have to do it and push through. A lot of energy is getting wasted.
Yeah.
Versus, what is it that I'm doing next? See how much easier that is. What am I choosing next? What's required my attention right now? Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. I'll do that. No, that doesn't feel light, so I'm not doing that. And usually if I don't want to do something and it's not light, it's something that either can wait, or I might not need to do that. Maybe it's something that is that anti-conscious piece that we were talking about, that against us.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting you bring that up, because I'm just kind of all of a sudden realizing all these places where we use things like procrastination as a real way of killing our joy, or never getting to our joy. Like, we'll get to joy after we've finished the list, but the list never gets finished. So we never get to the joy.
And then the list gets longer.
And the list gets longer, and we don't do it because we actually don't receive joy from the list, right?
Right. We are totally ignoring whatever is on the list and then getting frustrated we didn't do it. So that gives even more energy.
Yeah. And, you know, to tie this back to the beginning of our conversation, I wonder, you know, when we have these things that we're procrastinating around, you know, I wonder even just asking, hey, who does this
belong to?
Who does this item number 4 on my list? Who does that even belong to? Right. And get the sense of like, what's even relevant to us that's on our list, and what can we become aware of? Because it's like, we're talking about how choice creates, and we're talking about where lots of times there are unconscious choices that are creating what's showing up. Right. And okay, so what would it take to have more awareness, to have greater consciousness, so that we can actually choose what's going to work? And so, you know, so if we're trying to fill our time with all these things that are actually based on conclusions and judgments and agendas and all these
part of this linear reality,
that we have to do because of this or for that person, or to be you know, this role that we've chosen successfully, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Especially that role chosen 300 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So I wonder too, going through our to-do list and being like, okay, so who does this all belong to? And getting a sense of like, wow, if I was actually choosing to create my life, to create my business, to create my household, to create my family, right?
Yeah. What can we actually shift and change?
Yeah.
What would I choose? What can I add to my life that will create more, instead of just going by the list that we're so used and untrained to do? I found out, like, right now I don't have any lists. I do have like scheduled appointments, don't get me wrong, because otherwise I'll forget them. But as far as lists, I look, okay, what do I need? What do I choose to create now?
Yeah, and it is that thing of joy as a way of being, right? It's like like the list. We might have, you know, like reminders, things jotted down, and yet it's
like a shopping list.
Yeah, but it's a very different energy than, you know, these to-dos, you know, these very serious to-dos, which are not really about being at all.
No, it's about doing.
Yeah, and the procrastination can actually just go away when we're choosing what's in alignment. We were talking about the tuning fork earlier, right? And when we're actually in tune with what it is we'd like to create, what we'd like to be choosing, all those barriers and challenges, they begin to fall away, because they, you know, there's nothing solid for them to hook onto anymore.
And what's interesting, you just said something, because we are so entrained in this reality. If we do something, then we can be. When in reality of possibilities, it's you be so you can do.
Yes.
It's much easier to do when you're being.
Yeah, so you can take action. Yeah.
Because you know what actions to take, versus when you're doing the action, it creates more action or reactions. How often those actions created reaction in other people, or even in you. Like for me, a lot of things I've done, and especially going kind of like looking over my medical practice, there was so much reaction to things that were not working in the practice, especially with the paperwork and documentation and billing and stuff. It did not work for me.
Yeah.
Versus if it was just about being and healing, everything else would have fallen in place.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier to do when you're being that joy, being that happiness, being that ease that we talk about.
So you created this Akashic School of Creation. So how does that fit into all of this? What is that school, and you know, what is it that you were choosing to create that, and what does it also offer to others who are choosing that practice?
What Akashic Records are is records of the soul, but it's much more than a record of the soul. It's infinite possibility of past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. Infinite possibilities for people to choose. These, as I always talk about, the physical world, and then there is the infinite possibility, which is pretty much consciousness. Mm. And there are different ways of accessing it, and that's not outside of us. I'm talking always in the classes, it's in our hearts. A lot of modalities talk about being from your heart. Everything has to be from the heart. This is where the Akashic Records are. Mm. So there is a different way of accessing it. Different schools do it differently. I've been trained with a sacred prayer. About 2-3 years ago, I was given a different prayer to open the records. Prayer is a vibrational frequency of the words that's used there. And what it does, said in a different way, it creates a vibrational frequency for our brain to go into theta wave. So we can access our own knowing of the universe. I think I just lost you, Rebecca. I will keep talking. And what it does, when you go into the records, you can change your life. You can create. Okay, I found this. You can look at your past choices that allowed for this to happen or to be in your life. It's about choosing to shift it. And again, in that modality, there are tools to change your life, to change those unfinished businesses with prayers, meditation, and the points on the hand, which releases a lot of energy with what is. With what's going on with my school, I opened it about 2 years ago, and there's a couple of levels. What creates that is when you go into the records, you open yourself to infinite possibility, again with a question. And what if it was more than you can possibly imagine? And with Rebecca gone, I think we'll probably finish on that note. I cannot get hold of her. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can always look us up online. So
I asked you about the Akashic School of Creation, mm-hmm. and I think you were talking about the your souls and
the infinite
possibilities, and then I think that's where I dropped off.
Okay, so we can go there. So pretty much Akashic Records are the records of the soul journey, past, present, and future, but it's infinite possibilities of past, present, and future. Every choice, as we talk about, creates. Mm-hmm. So in Akashic Records, you can literally see how each choice creates a different path in life. So if there is like 2 possibilities or more, and you choose by going to possibility A, you are kind of like solidifying that part in that area. So it's hard to move. You still can choose something else. That's what choice creates. So with the school, I teach people how to access their records. And as I said, they are in your heart. that's where you function from. You go into the heart and you access your knowing. And there are different tools that you can use. There are prayers, there are meditation, and points on the hand, which allows you to sometimes erase the past, even past lives, where you can create not from the necessity of finishing the contracts, but from actual freedom of total choice and infinite possibilities.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's like the ultimate in, we were talking about, flipping the switch, right? That's like the ultimate of just saying, well, I'm not even bound to that anymore.
Exactly. I'm not
So
bound to the karma.
Yeah.
And dharma and all that sort of that wheel that continues perpetually keep us in the same, I would say, circle or circle of life.
Wow.
And keeps bringing us back to solve the same problems.
It's so interesting. So now does each person have their own Akashic record, or is there a greater Akashic record that we all
of the
play
above.
a part of? How does that work? So if someone comes to you for a consultation, what is that like for someone who's never heard about it? I'm actually not overly familiar with it myself, and it's really intriguing to hear you speak about this. So if someone else is listening and they're like, I don't even know what that is, and it's like, it's my universe. Like, what is that like to have a reading, or
and I'd like to differentiate between readings and consultation, because there are some movements of Akashic Records which are not true Akashic Records consultations. They're readings, and a lot of them are just psychic readings.
Okay.
What people see, as I started talking about, there is our physical world, there is infinite possibility where we start creating from the energy, and then there is a buffer zone where our choice in the physical world created something in the Akashic field, and that started coming down. It solidified in that buffer zone of psychic world, as I call it, where there are entities, where there are angels, there are demons. So there is already duality of light and dark, good and bad, versus in the Akashic field, there is no duality. It's pure consciousness.
Okay.
So when I do the consultation and we go into the records, it's infinite possibilities. I cannot predict the future and I will not, because that's where one choice created one future. And person has multiple futures based on each choice they do in every second of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
What I usually do, we look at the patterns that govern the person's life. Let's say they have certain type of relationships over and over and over again. Let's say, like with me, I was attracted to alcoholics and drug addicts, which is interesting choices in itself. But looking at my past lives and seeing where that contract was, the contract of a healer to heal them, and obligation toward that specific person. By clearing that, and especially what's very helpful is forgiveness.
Okay.
In Akashic Records, we work a lot with forgiveness. And it doesn't mean the forgiveness of Christianity, where you forgive and you put another and let them beat yourself again.
Yeah.
Another cheek. This is not about turning the other cheek. The forgiveness of Akashic Records is about forgiving yourself for being the victim, forgiving them for doing that, and forgiving yourself for actually hurting yourself. There is like 3 parts to the prayer. By doing that, you're taking the energy of either abuse or something that was going on at that time and releasing it back to the person who did that.
So actually another way of returning to sender.
Returning to sender, exactly. Because I remember years ago hearing a wonderful explanation when we don't forgive. When we are angry at somebody, it's like taking a poison and thinking the other person will die.
Yeah.
That's what we are reversing with Akashic Records. And it doesn't, like, by the way, forgiveness prayer is published on my Facebook page. So you can use it. It's not just for people who took my classes. My idea is for people to use the tools. They don't have to be in the records to use those tools. They can be, like, a lot of healing tools can be used outside the records. Mm-hmm. And people have been using it already for quite a bit. And they notice a lot of difference, a lot of shifts in their lives. The idea is to change our lives to have more joy, more ease. And the more we release the energy that prevents us from what we are, because a lot of those anger and blame and shame, it sticks us and puts the barriers and puts a lot of that extra energy which we carry, which is not functional for us. So by using the forgiveness, or these, a lot of, like, some prayers are to release energy patterns. So in consultation, we'll look at what prayer can be used, what grace points are the points on the hand, what grace points can be used to release that pattern in their lives.
Wow. And this is all something that people learn through the school, the Akashic School Creation.
Yeah. The basic class teaches them how to enter the records, and then the level 2 or advanced class, we go into records, starts creating. And you can create a lot with the, I wouldn't say help of Akashic Records, but in that field of energy, because this is the energy of joy and being, and infinite possibilities. I've done a lot of paintings with that. I wrote some things. Well, I haven't published my book, but I started writing the book with the help of the Akashic field. And people created music. By the way, a lot of composers, like the great music, was created in the records.
Oh, wow. So from that field.
From that field of possibilities, because it's everything there. There is a lot of healing. People go there just to get healed, because that's energy of, as I said, it can shift the body back to that spherical, releasing the stress. People have been telling me, it's like, oh, I just go there for like 10-15 minutes just to be there, just to calm down when I'm stressed. And there were also studies done. It wasn't a very big study. I think there was like 50 people. No, actually 50 people did the aura pictures before and about an hour or hour and a half. I have my own, on the school that I was before, Akashic Records Consultant International, they still use the picture of my aura.
Oh, wow. So is that Kirlian photography? Is that what you're
Yes,
talking
it is.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I think on 5 people, they were able to do the study with encephalogram to show that the person goes into theta wave. Within, how long does it take to read the prayer? From the moment they start reading to the moment when they finish reading the prayer, they were in a theta wave from the alpha state.
Wow.
But it was only 5 people, so it wasn't published. I think the neurosurgeon wanted $5 million, which at that time the school did not have.
Yeah.
To stand on.
Wow. And yet, what would it take to play with that? And yeah.
And see
what would it create? So we will make sure that we have your Facebook link in the show notes. We'll also make sure that we have your website link in the show notes so that people can learn more about that and, of course, contact you about that. And before we close, joy is a way of being. This is November, and this time, for the last 4 years, actually, I believe, I've been doing a 30 days of gratitude. There's a group, the Be Happy group, and anyone is welcome to join it. So if you're interested in that, I will also put the link in the show notes. And it's basically 30 days of exploring and deepening and playing with a gratitude practice. So, if we can spend just a little bit of, not spend, but if we can be in the energy of gratitude, even just a little bit every day for 30 days, then what does that choice create? What can be created in the next 335 days of the year? And what about beyond? So everyone is invited. And joy is a way of being. Where does gratitude fit into that?
It's pretty much right there. Because when we're joyful, we're so grateful. And when we are grateful, we're so joyful. They go hand in hand because both of them have one of the highest vibration of emotions. By the way, I'm not sure people are aware, there is a emotional scale. Literally, it's like our body goes into different vibration with different emotions. And of course, the depression, the anxieties, they're all very low. And the fear, I don't remember the numbers, but they measured those emotions. I think they were like 2, 3, 4, maybe. I'm just making it up at this moment. But the energy of joy and gratitude are like in 500, 600s.
Are you talking about the vibration of this? Are you talking about the vibrational frequency of the cells? Like the megahertz. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And when we're talking about joy and gratitude, they're way up on a scale, together with love, together with a lot of others, what we call high emotions, but in reality, they are more spaces of being. Yeah.
Well, because when we go into those places of depression, right, into places of anger or worry,
that's
or
a construction.
We're choosing a space of separation. So not only are we separating oftentimes from our being, from ourself, sometimes from our bodies, we tend to separate from the people in our lives, from people in general, and everything, that field of infinite possibilities that you're talking about, we become separate. And so what I hear you saying is that the more that we are choosing to go into a space of joy, of gratitude, that we actually are in greater oneness, in greater connection with everything, and actually no longer in that space of separation and exclusion.
Because that space of Akashic Records or Akashic Field is a space of joy and possibilities. And when people are in that joyful state, they just automatically go there. They don't even need the prayer. Some people go in meditation, some people go in a dream state. So the prayer is not the only way of getting to the records. It's just the easiest to get to the joy.
So if someone is playing with a gratitude practice, would you invite them to say the prayer, if that would be fun for them, as they then go into whatever it is that they're choosing for their gratitude practice?
Yes, it's possible. And I would invite them to use the forgiveness prayer when they go into gratitude.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The prayer that you've offered on your Facebook page. So they would go through the prayer, and then from that space, whatever they're choosing as their gratitude practice, they would go into that from that.
And it's actually translated into Spanish and Hebrew right now.
Oh, wow. So English, Spanish, and Hebrew. Okay. And is that in the files? Is that in a file?
It's actually like somewhere in a thread on the page. So if you scroll down or up, I'm not sure where you will find it. But
maybe I did
post. Yeah, I post in every language.
Okay, cool. And I'll see if I can pull the English one.
Yeah, I might actually send it so you can maybe
Yeah,
put it
I'll
in the
include the
thread.
English one. That would be great. And then, so if people did want to begin incorporating this prayer, they read it and they're like, yes, I'd like to incorporate this prayer into my daily life or into my life. How often, when,
I
how
usually
would they use
recommend
it?
to start maybe a few times in the morning, a few times at night. Maybe like recommendations from the records was 9 times in the morning, 9 times at night.
Ah, okay. And out loud to yourself, does it matter?
Doesn't matter. Whatever works for the person. It
Cool.
works both ways, loud or kind of like quiet.
Sing it, dance it, whisper it, sing it.
Absolutely. Whatever works.
Skywrite it. Perfect. Awesome. Well, Helen, it has been amazing to speak with you today. And we went everywhere. And I see all the places where, we kept kind of coming back to these pieces that that really can be usable. And you talked about having a really pragmatic practice, and which
That's
I guess
what I like. I don't like because I've done a lot of, as I said, spiritual practices where you imagine things, where you imagine it's working. I like something that you use it and you know that you feel lighter.
Okay.
And you can see maybe not so much results right away, but there is more joy.
Something changes.
Something changes.
You go from this to this.
Yeah, or at least like this.
Yeah, that's the 1 degree shift, right? And then you just
exactly. You ask for degree shift. So it's maybe from here, maybe a little bit, and then it slowly starts moving up.
How does it get any better than that? That's amazing.
And what else is possible?
Yes.
What else can we create in this lifetime, in this universe?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much magic can we use?
And what if we actually did have total choice? So
we actually do have a total freedom of choice.
Yeah. Only if we choose it.
Only if we choose it.
Cool. Well, Helen, thank you again so much. And thank you to all of you who have joined us today and also in the future. If you have been enjoying this episode and if you've enjoyed other episodes, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also like us on Facebook, The Art of Creation Show, and see what's coming up, what's already happened, and what is in creation for the future. So thank you guys so much for playing. Thank you, Helen, so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca, for inviting me. And thank you, everybody, for watching it, listening to it. And I hope maybe one day we can see you in person.
Yeah, what would it take? And I wonder what you all will choose over the course of the next week. Have fun, keep playing, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.